Hey everyone, it's Lisa here from Business in Heels, and I'm joined today by Annelise Szocs, and we're talking about breaking the bias. Hopefully, you've been enjoying the whole International Women's Day series. We've talked about breaking the bias from so many different perspectives. Now, Annelise Szocs actually comes to us from the Bratique, and she does a whole lot of boutique bra fitting services, but that's not why she's here today. She's talking to us about breaking the bias, and I have to warn you that her story will shock some of you, and some of you may need to have a box of tissues handy. So, Annelise, share with us a little bit about your story.
Okay, so oh boy, where do I start? Been on a bit of a wild journey for last almost 2 years. So we flash back to I think April 2020. Good grief, that seems like a long time ago now. I had this horrendous stomach pain, and I was back working in a corporate role, and I hadn't had anything like it in my life. I hadn't felt very well for a while. And I've been to the doctor a few times, and he'd sort of said, well, you have low iron. Your liver function tests are a little bit off, but it's probably just down to diet. You're not sleeping well, you're probably just stressed. I'd had a car accident in February 2019. I had some injuries around that. So I was on tablets for anxiety around driving, and that was put, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? That was given as the reason as to why I'd lost my appetite, and I wasn't eating much, so then I'd lost some weight. So if we shoot back to April, had the stomach pain at work. It didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. And I said to my boss at the time, I need to go to hospital. And she said, well, it's a pandemic. It's probably not a great place to be right now. I said, yeah, kind of not caring, no offense, but I need to go to the hospital. And she said, okay, do you want me to drive you to an ambulance? I said, no, I think I'll call an ambulance. And she said, why are you so calm? I'm like, I don't know, but I know that I need to go to hospital. I know I need an ambulance. So I rang an ambulance, got taken into hospital. The pain had sort of subsided from this samurai sword ripping across your abdomen. It had been dipped in hot lava before, of course. And I got into ED, and they were sort of, oh no, it's just this, it's just that, or sort of, you're a woman, it's probably related to your cycle, etc., etc. But we'll keep you and we'll do some tests. I had a bit of a feel of my abdomen, and I was there for a few hours, and they put me up on a ward, did more blood tests, did this test, that test. And then later that evening, more doctors came around, did another feel of my abdomen. And I heard them outside the curtain about 5 minutes later say, there's a mass. And you can imagine the swear words that ran through my head and probably out my mouth at that point. And I've just gone, oh boy, this isn't great. I just thought, oh, it's probably just a hernia. I'd had that dismissed as that as well. Finally fell asleep, woke up the next morning to a barrage of doctors at the end of my bed, sort of poking and prodding and doing this and that, and more tests and this and that. And, oh, we'll send you for an ultrasound, and we may need to send you for a CT afterwards, but we'll just send you for an ultrasound and see what happens. I'm thinking, okay, cool, yeah, no worries. Ultrasound, had a baby 2 years earlier, so I'm thinking, oh yeah, no worries. Well, I'm probably not pregnant, but who knows? Get into the ultrasound, they're going to start focusing on my liver. I'm thinking, oh, they're looking at the gallstone I've had for 10 years, no worries. And they turned the monitors around. I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. Then they finished up the ultrasound and said, I said, cool, am I going back to my room now? Like, no, you're going into a CT. And I've just gone, oh boy. I could sort of feel the colour kind of draining, what was left of the colour draining from my face at that point. Yeah, this isn't good. Went into the CT, came out of the CT, got put back on the ward, didn't see anyone for a few hours. I didn't know what was going on, and I'm sort of, none the wiser living in my happy, don't really know what's going on sort of place. And about 3:30, this very junior doctor came and said, my name's Doctor, I can't remember what her name was now. I'm a resident, and we've rang your husband to come in. And I've gone, oh boy. And I said, okay, you need to tell me what's going on here, because my husband is not going to cope if it's really bad news. He will not cope hearing this from you. He needs to hear this from me. So what's going on? And she wouldn't tell me. And I just badgered this poor kid. And I say poor kid, she was, I think, about 26. I'm 42. I badgered this poor kid into sort of, telling me what was going on. I said, you have to tell me. I have a right to know. Look, been through a lot in my life, whatever it is, I can take it. She's gone, it's looking like cancer. And I've just gone, oh, bleep. Just Yeah, more expletives, basically. Big fan of expletives these days also. And I was at that point, the only thing I could think of, and you have to excuse me if I start getting more emotional now. The only thing I could think of at that point was my then 2-year-old daughter. My mum actually passed away when I was 11. She was 50, and she had what we now know was bowel cancer, slightly different type to mine. And I grew up without a mother, so I'm sitting there thinking, great, it's cancer. This is bad. They've rung my husband to come in, and I have a 2-year-old sitting at home who is none the wiser as to what's going on. And my poor darling husband came in, Adam, and we got to go and sit in one of those lovely, I think it would have been one of those normal rooms they take you in to tell you that, bad news. But because of the pandemic, we ended up in staff cafeteria. And which is great because all these staff coming in and out with their cups of tea in there, bits and sort of walking in with their lunch to dinner to go in the microwave, and then just taking one look at me and kind of turning around and walking back out. And it was just a weird moment, like time just kind of froze. And I had to say, Adam, I have cancer and it's everywhere and it's not looking good. And I think that was probably the moment that really almost destroyed me mentally. And I think a lot of that is just because, we'd only been married a couple of years. We had a 2-year-old daughter. You made all these plans about life and, what we were going to do, where we were going to go. And all of a sudden it's come crashing down around us. And my husband is the sweetest, just most amazing human being you could ever want to meet. I actually met him on Tinder. Story for another day. And having to sit there and tell him that everything we'd planned was probably not going to come to fruition was just like, yeah. So from there, and it was 4:00 on a Friday afternoon. There weren't any sort of, I will call them head shrinkers. No disrespect to psychiatrists or psychologists, but when you've been through this, it's just you're kind of very cavalier about things when you get to the point where I'm at. And, there's no kind of psychological support available. Couldn't see a social worker because they all finished at 4:00 or 4:30 on a Friday. Wasn't enough time to arrange anything. So I was pretty much left to stew my own juices in hospital until the Monday. The oncologist came to see me with the registrar and said, yep, you have cancer. You're doing colonoscopy just to check, see what's going on. It's looking like bowel cancer, but it's everywhere. It's in your liver, it's in your lungs, it's in your lymph nodes. And I've just gone, great. Knowing what I know with family history of a lot of cancer, I've just immediately gone on my head, great, stage 4, brilliant. Not. I sort of said, okay, usual questions you ask, like, how long have I got? What do we do? What's going to happen? She said, we need to make an appointment. We need to book you in for chemotherapy. Sort of surgery, not an option. And then I've kind of freaked out. She said, the spread in your liver is far too extensive for surgery. We can't resect it. It's in both lobes. So you have a left lobe and a right lobe of your liver. And I had one very large metastatic tumour, which was across both lobes. And if you think of, let me just grab a tissue box. If you think of the size of a tissue box, it was probably pretty similar to this. So it was 14 centimetres long, 10 centimetres deep, and 10 centimetres length with height. Sorry, not good with measurements. It's a husband thing. So it was 14 by 10 by 10, so pretty big. And that was across both lobes. So that was why they couldn't resect me. Would have been too dangerous. And with the extensive spread in my lungs, there's no way I would have survived a general anaesthetic. So I'm sitting there going, I had, all these questions in my head and they just weren't coming out my mouth. And I sort of asked what I could. The next few days are kind of a blur. I think I went home on the Wednesday or the Thursday and I fell into this weird sort of funk that I suppose most people, or pretty much everyone, would fall into after they've been given that sort of diagnosis. And I think it's a funk you fall into regardless of what type of cancer has decided to invade your body, what stage you're at. I don't think it really matters what stage you're at with cancer. You hear the C word and you're immediately just like, great. Your life's kind of flashing before your eyes at the same time that it's just, every time stopped and you're standing still. And I think with that, it took me a good couple of weeks to kind of get my head around everything. But at the back of my mind the whole time was, you have a 2-year-old daughter you cannot let her grow up without a mum like you did. Like, no, not happening. And once I sort of got my head back in the game, had another appointment with my oncologist. But because, pandemic, right in the thick of it, at the start, obviously, 2020. We had this appointment on Monday, and it was telehealth. So my husband and I were on this telehealth call with them, video call with them. And I'd sort of had a couple of weeks. So I told a few people, not many. I wanted to tell people who I felt actually needed to know, as opposed to, just getting on Facebook and going, oh, by the way, I have stage 4 cancer. Yeah, cool. Have a nice day. And I think the really funny part was, as soon as you start telling people things, or you start telling people in your hospital room that you're inhabiting for 6 days with a real motley crew of ladies on general surgical ward, chemo, yeah, your hair's going to fall out and you're going to spend all your time spewing. And much as I love that movie, The Bucket List, it's not entirely accurate with the 2 guys that I've, spending all their time with their head in a toilet bowl. Some chemos do that, some chemos don't. And everyone's different. Every cancer is different. Every treatment regime is different. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach with how you're going to react to anti-cancer treatment or chemotherapy, radiation. So I'm sitting there thinking, great, well, if my hair's going to fall out, I don't want to be the one standing in the shower and washing my hair and I'm, oh, look, here's a handful of hair, or waking up in the morning with it all over my pillowcase. So my husband and I decided to shave my head. This is a Sunday afternoon. And he's like, well, how do we do this? And I said, well, we'll just put it in a ponytail and then snip it off. Because I've seen this on YouTube or TikTok. I said, it'd be fine. It took us probably an hour to sort that out. And I hate to think what it would look like, but at that point I didn't really care. So I just put a beanie on and forgot about it. Got up the next morning, got on the call with my oncologist and my cancer care coordinator nurse. And he sort of looked at me and go, oh, why are you wearing a beanie? Because it was quite a warm day. And I said, I shaved my head last night. And he's taken one look at my oncologist and then looked back. She's looked at him and looked back. And then they've had this weird look on their face and go, why are you smiling? It might have been a bit premature. And I've gone, why? Oh, the chemo you're going to have, your hair's probably not going to fall out. And I've just gone, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I've just shaved my head basically for nothing. And I said, oh, well, let's look on the bright side, shall we? No dandruff, no split ends. Don't have to get my regrowth done. No more dry shampoo. I can have any hairstyle I want as long as it comes from wigs. So, hey, wigs. And then that was just, I think there was a defining moment in terms of how I decided to handle this whole process. And I call it a process rather than a journey. And that was, absolute irreverent humour. Taking the mickey, poking the fun, or being, as I like to say, bowel cancer, being the butt of everyone else's jokes. That's me. Humour is such a fantastic tool. A lot of people would say, oh, you're deflecting. Well, I'm actually not deflecting. I'm trying to use humour to alleviate so some of the stress that, comes with being on this journey, but also some of the stress for other people in terms of, how they interact with me now that I have this, invader in my body. And with that, humour, laughter really is the best medicine. And I think with this journey, 80% of it has definitely been being able to get and keep your head in the game. And in the game meaning, what's the end goal? Well, survival, watching my child grow up. Still being around 40 years' time, so my husband and I can sit in rocking chairs on a porch somewhere and gripe at each other or whatever. Still giving my brothers grief, et cetera, et cetera. So
Annelise, a lot of people struggle, have people in their lives who have cancer and really struggle with this whole question of what do I say? What do I do? From your perspective as a person with cancer, what would you like to see other people doing, when they learn of it?
Okay. So I think, an important distinction you've made there, Lisa, is, it's a person with cancer. The person has a cancer and, very, very much a fan of person first language as a general rule, but particularly on this sort of the journey that I've been on, being called a cancer patient or being called a person with cancer has a really great impact on your mindset. So I think the first thing would be, please, if you can, ask someone what they kind of prefer to be referred to in that regard. whether they like to be called a person with cancer or whether they're happy being called a cancer patient. I don't think anyone does, because no one is patient when they have cancer. We just want it gone, let's face it. Just get that out of but I think also you tend to become a bit of a social pariah, and we have all become social pariahs in a way with the pandemic and having been locked up for so long. Not so much where I am obviously in regional Victoria. We've had probably much better time of it, people in Melbourne, people in Sydney, etc. But that being said, we're still what are we in, almost 2 years into this thing, or 2 years into this thing now, and we're still kind of locking ourselves up. A lot of people, with cancer or with immunosuppressive conditions, because we're too scared to go out. I don't go anywhere without an N95 mask on, even if it's someone comes to the door to deliver something. I've still got a mask on. It's force of habit now, and it's kind of weird in that regard. But with that said, I think also trying to, and I know it's really difficult for people because I've been through this with others in my lives who've been diagnosed. Trying to remember that person is still that person that that you love, that you care about, and not treating them like they're about to drop dead any second. We don't need to be mollycoddled. We don't need questions around, how many more rounds of chemo have you got? I get that a lot from people who sort of only just met me, and my answer to that usually confuses the hell out of them, which is, infinity. And like, what do you mean infinity? I'm like, well, on stage 4, I'm on chemo until I either can't take the chemo anymore, or the chemo stops working, at which point we try something else, and then we try something else, and then we try something else, and we just keep on trying till we run out of options, basically. And then there's still more options. So, try not to, I suppose, ask things like, how many more rounds of chemo have you got? Doesn't make you spew. I've been asked that. Has your hair fallen out? Why hasn't your hair fallen out? Do you wear wigs? And then I suppose the other assumption I get a lot, obviously being a younger woman, I'm 44 now. Don't tell anyone. 35 forever. So as a 35 forever-year-old woman, I suppose my biggest frustration is that as a female, when you tell people you have cancer, or if I go out wearing a headscarf, which I tend not to do these days, is automatically assumed that you'll have one of the sort of more front of people's minds cancers, like breast cancer. I have bowel cancer, and I don't particularly like using this word, but I have rectal cancer. So you don't really want to walk around talking about your rectum, but everyone's fine to walk around and talk about breasts or ovaries or uteruses. You say rectum, you say bowel, anything to do with number 2s, everyone loses their minds and they freak out, and it's just like, oh my God, I can't take it. Sorry, but as far as I'm aware, pretty much everybody poops. So I'm just going to put that out there now. Can't believe I said rectum online. Wow, good grief, times have changed. A friend of mine has anal cancer, and she's female. She's young like me. She's she's young. She's probably 49. And she just has bowel cancer, because as soon as you say the word anal cancer, everyone freaks out as well. They're like, oh, wow, okay. And there's a certain stigma around that. And I don't need to, confront the elephant in the room in terms of the stigma around anal cancer. She was unlucky enough to be infected with HPV, which is a human papillomavirus, when she was younger. This was, pre-HPV vaccines for young teenage girls and people. And, unfortunately, over time, some cells have gone rogue in her body, and that's probably what's actually led to it, although they can't really pick the actual source for it. So, I think if someone says to you, hey, I have rectal cancer, I have anal cancer, I have uterine cancer, I have breast cancer, throat, lung, whatever, try and keep an open mind and just say, well, look, that really sucks. Do you need anything? Can I help you? How can I help you?
So it's really checking in and offering some support and help, and not trying to anticipate what the care or anything is. I think that's really lovely. And I love the fact that you're breaking the bias by sharing all this stuff and giving us some perspective on, what good looks like for different people. And I think, cancer is unfortunately so prevalent today that I'm sure all of us know somebody who's been infected with it. And so, we're all dealing with different people. And I think, many of us have heard about the, I'm just going to send a lasagna over. That's not always the answer. And for some people that do have cancer, 20 lasagnas in the freezer is not the solution. But checking regularly and making sure that people are still felt like they're in touch with people, this is really important.
Absolutely.
So if you could give advice to people, just one piece of advice, what would that be, Annelise?
Okay. The biggest one for me, I think, is going to be to tell everyone, trust your body. You are the best person who knows your body the best. You are the best judge of your health. You are the best judge of what your normal is or what your normal is not. Any kind of change with your body, whether it's you think you might have a lump in your breast, or you just feel a bit off and you can't really put it down to anything, please go and see a doctor. I think the other thing, and this leads into that as well. And the other thing is, if you go to the doctor says, "Oh, it's probably just this. Let's try this," and then kind of forgets about it and things don't improve. Get a second opinion. Go back. Keep asking the questions. Be persistent. I actually saw 3 different GPs, and none of them put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4 for me with my diagnosis, purely because there is that bias around bowel cancer being an old person's disease, or specifically for some reason people think it's an old man's disease. It's not. Around 15,000 people are diagnosed with bowel cancer every year in Australia, and 10%, so around 1,500 of those are under 50. There are people in a bowel cancer support group that I'm on Facebook who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s. Most of us are sort of 30s, 40s. A lady in there passed away a few months ago. She's 29. And it was put down to, you had a baby, you had this, you had that, you had, things going on. Sorry, someone's at the door. I've got my Google screen going, someone's at the doorbell. And we called her Penny because I'm a big Bang Theory fan. So, knock, 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 Penny. Yeah. So the video doorbell's going off in the background. That's my sense of humour. So I think getting back to the question now, if you don't feel right, please get it checked out. Get it checked out. If anything changes, if your bathroom habits change at all, if your cycle habits change at all, if things just don't feel right, please go and get it checked. Most of the time it will be nothing, but you're far better off in a position where it's nothing or it's something and it's caught early than you get diagnosed with stage 4 and told you might have 6 months at best, probably more like 3. You're going to be on chemo for life. We can't give you surgery. We can't give you radiation. We can't do this. There's not much we can do for you. You may have 2 years. Well, 2 years later, I'm still sitting here because I'm stubborn. I think you alluded to it earlier. You've got a mindset that you're just going to keep trying things and you're just going to keep pushing on, and you're determined. And I guess, that's a really key message about breaking the bias, that, you're not accepting, necessarily the message that the doctors are giving you. You're going to continue to work it so that you get the best outcome for you and your family, which I think is really important. So if people take nothing away from this this brief message, breaking the bias is all about challenging the status quo, the ideas, and making sure you understand that. So I think you're a great example of breaking the bias. I'm sure many people may want to reach out to you and just touch base, but I think there's also a great message in all of this about just how you talk to people who have got chronic or potentially difficult diseases, and make sure that you treat them normally and check in and say hi and can I help you with something? I think that's great. So absolutely.
Thanks very much, Annelise, for coming on and having this discussion with me. We really appreciate you sharing your own personal journey. It's so valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege, to be able to do this today. And certainly, during International Women's Month, International Women's Day, International Women's Month, let's just make it International Women's Month every month, seriously. But no, absolutely an honour and a privilege. Yeah.
Thank you.